3 bodies, all found inside hollow trees, all placed perfectly. No signs of struggle, no footprints in the mud, no witnesses, no screams, just silence. And the strangest part? The investigators who worked this case, seasoned detectives, people who had seen everything, every single one of them said the same thing afterward. I've never felt fear like that on a job. Not before, not since. This is the story of the Hollow Tree murders. And I promise you, by the time we're done here, you're going to have questions that nobody has ever been able to answer. Let's go back to the beginning. Harwick County, a quiet, heavily forested stretch of land in the rural American Midwest. Picture endless tree lines, gravel roads that went for miles before you hit a stoplight, and communities so small that everybody knows everybody, or at least they think they do. The population of the county seat, a little town called Aldermere, sat at just under 4,000 people as of the early 2000s. Churches on every corner. Friday night football. The kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and let their kids roam until the streetlights came on. Nothing bad happened in Aldermere, until it did. The first disappearance came in late October. A man named Dale Pruitt, 41 years old, divorced, worked at the grain elevator on the edge of town, didn't show up for his shift on a Monday morning. His co-workers figured he'd called in sick without telling anyone. His neighbor figured he'd gone hunting. His ex-wife, well, she figured he'd just taken off for a few days the way he sometimes did. Nobody panicked. Not at first. It was a deer hunter, a retired schoolteacher named Gerald Moss, who made the discovery 11 days later, deep in the Blackthorn Pines, a section of old-growth forest about 4 miles from the edge of Aldermere. Gerald had been tracking a buck through the brush when he noticed something that stopped him cold. A massive hollow oak, one of the ancient ones, wide enough at the base to park a small car inside if you cut it open. And stuffed into that hollow was Dale Pruitt. Gerald Moss later told investigators, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Dale looked almost peaceful, seated upright, arms rested at his sides, eyes closed, like someone had tucked him in for sleep. Nobody does that to a body by accident. Investigators moved fast. The county sheriff's department called in state police within 24 hours. The cause of death was eventually ruled as asphyxiation, but here's the part that made no sense. There was no sign of violence on the body, no ligature marks around the throat, no bruising consistent with a physical struggle, no defensive wounds on the hands. Dale Pruitt, by every physical measure, appeared to have simply stopped breathing. The forensic examiner flagged it immediately. She noted in her report that the presentation was unlike anything she had documented in over 20 years of work. She couldn't explain it, and she said so on record. But the county kept it quiet. Small town, big reputation for being safe. The sheriff wanted answers before the story spread. They didn't get their answers in time. 6 weeks later, it happened again. A woman named Loretta Spain, 53 years old, a librarian, beloved in the community. She had gone missing on a Wednesday evening after her book club meeting. Her car was found parked on the side of Route 9, driver's door open, purse still on the passenger seat. And 8 days after that, a hiker found her, inside a hollow tree, different forest, different tree species, a massive old sycamore this time, about 6 miles north of where Dale Pruitt had been found. But the same presentation, seated, peaceful, eyes closed, arms at her sides, no signs of struggle, no explainable cause of death. The county couldn't keep it quiet anymore. By the time the news broke, people in Aldermere were terrified. Deadbolt sales at the hardware store sold out in a weekend. The elementary school started parent escort requirements for dismissal. People stopped walking alone after dark. And then the third victim turned up before investigators had even finished processing the second scene. His name was Raymond Calloway, 26 years old, a farmhand who worked seasonal contracts across the county. He'd only been in Aldermere for about 8 months. Nobody knew him well. He was found in a hollow elm tree at the edge of an old cemetery road, roughly halfway between the 2 previous sites. Same position, same stillness, same complete absence of an explanation. 3 victims, 3 hollow trees, and the person who put them there had left behind absolutely nothing. State investigators descended on Harwick County. The FBI was quietly consulted. Forensic teams combed all 3 scenes for weeks. Here is everything they found. Almost nothing. No DNA foreign to the victims. No tool marks. No tire tracks near the trees that couldn't be attributed to the hikers or hunters who stumbled onto the scenes. Whoever did this was either extraordinarily careful or extraordinarily different from any criminal they'd ever encountered before. But here's where it gets strange. All three victims had something in common, something investigators kept out of public reports for months. Each one had recently been seen arguing with someone in town. Not the same person, not the same argument, but the nature of the disputes was oddly similar. In each case, they had accused someone of a lie. Dale Pruitt had publicly confronted a local businessman about a land deal he believed was fraudulent. Loretta Spain had reportedly told a school board member she had proof of falsified meeting minutes. Raymond Calloway, the farmhand, the newcomer, had apparently told his employer he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to see out on the back acreage of the property. All three had known something. All three had spoken up about it. All three ended up in hollow trees. Was it coincidence? Was someone in Aldermere silencing people who threatened to expose them? Or was this pattern something investigators were reading into the data because they were desperate for a lead? The theories multiplied fast. Some people in the community pointed to a reclusive man who lived deep in the Blackthorn Pines, a former county employee who'd been fired under unclear circumstances years earlier and had not been seen regularly in town since. Investigators did speak with him, twice, but he was never charged, never formally named a suspect. Other theories went darker. Some local residents became convinced this was some kind of ritualistic practice, pointing to the positioning of the bodies, the forest locations, the near-ceremonial arrangement of each victim. Academics who studied regional folklore got involved. One professor from a university 3 states over drove to Aldermere and spent 2 weeks researching indigenous land use history and 19th-century settler burial practices in the area. She found some unsettling historical parallels. Apparently, there were records, old ones, fragmented and debated by historians, of a practice in that region involving hollow trees as spiritual thresholds. Places where, according to some belief systems that existed in that area centuries ago, the living could leave offerings to influence what happened to those they considered enemies. Nobody was suggesting the supernatural, but the cultural echo was hard to ignore. And then the investigation hit a wall that nobody expected. 14 months after the third body was found, the killings stopped. Just like that, no fourth victim, no resolution, no arrest, no deathbed confession, no break-in-the-case moment. The file stayed open. The investigators stayed assigned. The FBI quietly moved its attention elsewhere. Aldermere went back to its routines. Slowly, uncomfortably, people still talked about it, but in lowered voices. The hollow trees out in the Blackthorn Pines became places locals refused to walk near. Parents told their kids to stay out of the old-growth forest. The 3 sites became something between a local legend and a wound that nobody wanted to reopen. And then, 9 years after it ended, a retired investigator who had worked the original case gave one interview. To a small regional podcast that covered cold cases in the Midwest. He said he believed, in his gut, that all 3 victims had been killed by the same person. He said that person lived in Aldermere during the time of the murders. And he said, and this is what made people sit up, that he believed that person was still there, living quietly, maybe even someone people passed on the street without a second thought. But here's the part of that interview that nobody expected. He said investigators had, at one point, identified someone they believed was responsible. A real person. Someone with means, with motive, with access to all 3 victims. They couldn't prove it, not even close to proving it. But he said, and these were his exact words, "We knew." And then he stopped giving interviews entirely. He passed away 2 years after that podcast aired. The case remains officially unsolved. The name of the person investigators believed was responsible has never been made public. Somewhere in America right now, there may be a person walking around who put 3 bodies in hollow trees and was never touched by consequence. And nobody can prove otherwise. So here's what I want to leave you with tonight. 3 people, Dale Pruitt, Loretta Spain, Raymond Calloway, all spoke up about something. All disappeared. All ended up arranged inside ancient trees in a forest most people never walked through. Was it one killer? Was it something coordinated? A secret being protected by more than one person in that small town? Was the pattern investigators noticed real, or were they reaching? I genuinely don't know, and that's what keeps me up thinking about cases like this. What do you think happened in Harwick County? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to be here the next time I go down a rabbit hole that probably won't let me sleep, subscribe. I'll see you then.